Hello, good morning, and welcome to our webinar today. Today's webinar on taking care while giving care with Saltmarsh Financial Advisors. Before we begin our presentation, I have just a few housekeeping items to go over. First, everyone is muted to limit disruptions. If you have questions, you're welcome to share them with us using that questions feature in your control panel. If we have time throughout the presentation or at the end, we'll answer your questions together, but if not, our speakers will follow up with you after. Located also in your control panel are various resources, including speaker contact information. Feel free to download those there. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you can expect a copy of it in your inbox within the next 24 hours. And finally, upon leaving the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a short survey. Please take a moment to leave your feedback with us. We'd love to know what you thought and other topics you would like us to cover in the future. I'm going to now hand it off to Sarah Horn, an Associate Financial Advisor with Saltmarsh Financial Advisors, to introduce our panelists and get us started. Sarah?
Thanks, Nancy. I'm so happy to see everyone here. Welcome, and thank you so much for attending today. I am so excited to welcome you to the second installment of our newest initiative called Building Confidence, which is a women-focused series. And although it is focused on issues women face, it's also very applicable to men. So we welcome both men and women to attend. Like Nancy mentioned, my name is Sarah Horn, and I have the privilege of serving as an associate financial advisor here at Saltmarsh and the privilege of moderating this event. Today, we have an excellent panel prepared to discuss our topic, taking care while giving care. The panelists represent a compassionate team of experts to help you as you chart a course through this role as a caregiver. And whether you've recently become a caregiver for a loved one or you've been caring for a loved one for years, the panelists today will share some wonderful insights about how to care for yourself while you're caring for others, including financial, emotional, physical, and logistical help. I'd like to share a few housekeeping items as we get started. First off, this webinar is being recorded, and that's for a good reason. We have a really packed agenda today, and we're going to share a lot of valuable insights. And we also know that caregivers' schedules change a lot, so we absolutely welcome you to return to this recording as often as you would like, and the recording will be made available to you in the coming days. We'll begin the discussion with questions and responses from our panelists, and we did receive a few questions from our registrants. We may not have time to address all of them, but please know that we've captured those questions, and we plan to follow up with you directly to give you a response. And finally, we're pleased to share several resources with you, like Nancy mentioned, and they're available for download for you today. So I'll get started by introducing our fantastic panel of experts. Sharon Oakes is a senior care specialist with assisted living locators and a speaker on aging, elder abuse, dementia, and resources in the Panhandle for seniors. She's also a former social worker. She has so much experience working with vulnerable and diverse populations, which include children, trauma victims, hospice patients, and families as well. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being here. Emmy Flowers is a mental health counselor intern with Faith and Hope Counseling. Emmy has a wealth of knowledge on caregiving as she herself has extensive experience working for hospice services and has also served as a caregiver for her late husband. She assists clients on a variety of issues, including grief and loss, trauma, terminal diagnoses, and anticipatory grief, among other things. Tara Taylor is a licensed massage therapist, yoga instructor, and practitioner of the grief recovery method. She works with groups of clients as well as clients one-on-one to support them in healing using modalities such as coaching, breath work, and body work. Finally, Christina Doss is a shareholder and managing director of the Investment Advisory Services practice at Saltmarsh, Cleveland, and Gund. She has over 30 years of experience in client wealth management and financial planning services and has served on a number of boards and committees in the Pensacola area. And personally, I'm also proud to share that she was recently recognized for her contributions to the Pensacola community with the Junior League of Pensacola's Women in Business Award for 2023. So I'm just so thrilled to have each of these panelists here today and want to take a second to say thank you. As we get started, I'd really like to begin with Emmy. And I'm sure many people on the call, if not all of you, understand that caregivers experience a lot of stress in this role. So Emmy, can you talk about the effects that this stress has on the clients that you've seen who are serving as caregivers, and specifically some of the signs that a caregiver could be experiencing burnout?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me, Sarah. You mentioned that I helped my late husband, and so he was sick for 13 months. I was his caregiver, and so I do understand that being a caregiver affects us emotionally, it affects us physically, it affects us mentally, and at times it can affect us spiritually. And so that entire package affects our health. And so I don't want to be doom and gloom when I talk about the effects of being a caregiver, but at the same time, I think it's really important that people are self-aware and take care of themselves. And I liken this to, we have to put on an oxygen mask on an airplane before we take care of our child next to us. And it's the same. We have to take care of ourselves in order to be a good caretaker. Some of the symptoms of burnout I want to cover first, and you will notice a lot of them are depression symptoms. So lack of energy, loss of interest, change in your diet, and that can look like not wanting to eat, and it can look like eating too much. Sleep problems, being exhausted and wanting to sleep too much, and also not being able to sleep, a feeling of hopelessness, and anger. A lot of people don't think about anger, but anger can be a sign of burnout. Being argumentative, impatient, headaches, a lower resistance to illness, neglecting your own physical and emotional needs, which again affects how we treat the one we're trying to take care of. And so those are some of the things that I want to mention. Now, you notice a lot of those are depression symptoms. And so we know that there's a 40 to 70% chance that people that are caregivers will have depression, and more than, well, a quarter to a half of that can be chemical depression. And that's important because we need to be aware of that, again, in order to take care of ourselves. We also want to think about that stress and frustration. So stress and frustration can come out in that impatience and that anger. And so we'll talk about it a little bit more later when we talk about self-care. And I know that some of the others will talk about that as well. But giving ourselves time to take care of ourselves in order to avoid feeling that anger and frustration, which unfortunately a lot of times, and I know Sharon will talk about this as well, comes out onto who we're actually taking care of. And all of us know that's the last thing that we want to do. I know that a lot of this panel is women, and I'm not simply speaking to women. We know there's lots of male caretakers, including my own brother. But we do know that women in particular are affected even more than men. And we also know that women are the majority of the caretakers. And so I think it's really important. And the number that they're giving is 36 hours per week. And when we're a caretaker, it's almost laughable to hear that number because we're all doing more than 36 hours a week. And so one of the things about women in particular, but all caretakers, is that mortality rates go up. And this is a little bit of a staggering statistic, but we know that 63% of people have a higher mortality rate as a caregiver than those the same age. And a lot of that goes back to not taking care of ourselves. So we're missing doctor's appointments. We're not getting those mammograms. We're not getting the exercise. We're not eating healthy because we're spending all of our energy taking care of our loved one. And so it's really important to think about that. Also, when we go back to our resistance to disease goes down, that's a huge factor because we're already not going to see the doctor, but we know that heart disease goes up twofold, especially in women. Cancer rates go up, and then we're not seeing our doctors. We're not taking care of ourselves, and exercise is a huge component in that. And I'm sure that will be talked about later. So
Yeah.
again, I don't want to be the doom and gloom, but I do want people to be aware of the importance of taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Emmy. I am just amazed by the statistic of 36 hours a week. And when you talk about taking care of yourself, maybe you're juggling a job or your own children or, any number of things, it can be really hard to squeeze in the opportunity to care for yourself. So, Tara, I would really like for you to address some of the misconceptions that people might have about caring for themselves physically, like it just takes too much time, or if I can't do a really intense workout, what's the point? So, Tara, can you kind of give us some guidance for if you're trying to fit that in? What are some practices somebody can do to start caring for their body?
Thank you, Sarah. And before I start to speak about that, thank you, Emmy. That was really informative, and I enjoyed hearing your perspective and your experience. In regards to wellness during this time of chronic and constant stress, I think the first suggestion that I would make is to throw out the all or nothing wellness mindset that we've all been conditioned with in our society, magazines and TV and everything else. Kind of this idea of perfection, or what I like to call nailing it or failing it. You're either, on top of it and doing your exercise and eating well, or you're not. And I think that mindset really is counterproductive in this scenario and in life in general. Being perfect in your wellness habits is ideal, but life is rarely ideal. So just throwing out the notion that you need this large uninterrupted chunk of time in order to care for yourself is the first thing I think I would suggest for a person in this situation. There are things that you can do to create a little bit of relief in that chronic marathon of stress, and all of those little moments of relief or of peace can add up to you making it through this time of your life without completely losing the connection to your body, without completely kind of feeling like you're losing it in general, if you will. And would you like me to speak to those right now, or? Okay. So a few things that you can do are brief breathwork practices that can take 5 minutes, and can truly create a calming, soothing effect on the nervous system. You can do stretches bedside in a chair next to your loved one while they sleep. Yeah, and then the other thing that I would suggest is a practice called yoga nidra, or sometimes it's called non-sleep deep rest. You can do that in 10 to 20 minutes, and I've shared a recording which I would actually like to improve upon as far as technology purposes. But you can lie down and do a yoga nidra practice in 10 to 20 minutes and emerge from that feeling more rested and ready to meet the challenges that you are surely meeting on a daily basis.
Thank you so much, Tara. I'm excited, Tara, to be able to close with you sharing an example of one of those breathing practices as we close the presentation. So everyone will be able to leave, I hope, feeling a bit rejuvenated, a bit refreshed. So Tara, thank you for sharing that. At this point, I'd like to kind of redirect the conversation to Sharon. So a huge part of caring for a loved one is getting the resources that you need to be able to do that. So Sharon, working with so many families and care providers, I know that you have fantastic guidance for building a team to help a caregiver care for their loved one. What guidance would you offer in building a team that you can trust?
Well, first of all, you have to make sure that that team is vetted in that they have a personal commitment to the person that you love, and or that these people can actually help. My role in the community, whether I'm speaking to community groups or churches or seniors or adult children, is to be a cheerleader, to provide hope that it will get a little better, and then to provide the resources like I just learned about Emmy and Tara. Perfect, because that all fits into what I talk about, from the emotional to the physical challenges and the focus on yourself. Now, being able to focus on yourself means you need to be able to find resources in the community to care for your loved one while you're not there. So you can go get your hair done. So you can go to a therapist appointment. So you can go to your doctor. There are specific things in the community, and I've researched them out. I've been a social worker 52 years now. So I pretty well know all the players in town, the good ones and the bad ones. And so what I try to do is provide specifics. They want concrete suggestions. So what that means is you find a neighbor, you find a family member that you can trust who will come in, not just you call them like, I'm going to go have lunch with you today. No, no, no. You do a specific time, a specific part of the day where they come over for 2 hours and they sit with your loved one. Church is a wonderful resource, and usually it doesn't cost any money. There are a lot of agencies in town that do charge, and people are under the false illusion that Medicare pays for everything if you're 65 and older, which is not true. We have to have sometimes a come to Jesus meeting about expenses and all of that, but I can tell them the exact cost, and that helps them. Then they can prepare. What are your financial options out there? Where can you go to? There's respite care. Many people don't know, like with hospice, I mean, you may have experienced this when they are just, the caregiver is at the end of their rope. They can get 5 days with hospice of relief. They can get 5 nights of sleep. They can go see their grandchildren. They can do something for themselves, go to the doctor and get that health issue addressed. So that is available. There are day stays where people, particularly with dementia, because I work more in that world than I do with anything else, but there are places where you can go. Yes, it costs money, but there are other resources like the VA that people don't even know about. And so picking up the phone and calling and being able to actually talk to a live person who can answer your question. I always talk to people in crisis. Nobody calling me is just wanting information. They all are having a major crisis in their lives. After 30 minutes, we can pretty well calm them down, and then I can steer them to where they need to go in the community. Whatever resource it is, whether it's legal, emotional, physical, medical, all of those options are available. I spend a lot of my time in networking groups so that I know who the people are that I can trust, because I'm 74. All these people are in my age group, many of them actually. And so I have a dog in this fight. So that is my whole role in doing this.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you just to you for your dedication to this field. I want to kind of zoom in on something that you mentioned, just the financial aspect of it can be confusing, and in fact, it's not uncommon for people in caregiving roles to also fall into the role of being the financial manager of the person they're caring for. And that can have an impact on the caregiver's financial plan as well as the person being cared for, their financial plan. So as a result of that, it can be overwhelming without having support or without having a plan. So I'd like to direct to Christina at this point. Christina, what specific areas of focus can a trusted financial advisor provide guidance to a caregiver?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So I have to start with, this is incredible information that Emmy, Sharon, and Tara are sharing with us today. You know, I too have been in this position. My parents' health began failing several years ago, and I became the healthcare and financial caregiver and power of attorney for their care needs. So I have sat in these shoes. I continue to do so with my mom. And so I can relate to all that you all are talking about. But I didn't know about these resources starting 7, 8, 10 years ago. And so I'm so happy that we can do this to kind of bring this group together and provide this information to those that are participating. And we hope that you will get the word out to others. You know, Sharon, Emmy started actually with sharing some statistics about women and, you know, who are the caregivers. And I want to kind of reiterate that, because when you look at, it's estimated that as high as 75% of all caregivers are female, and women are more likely to need care later on due to longer life expectancies. But as we're all discussing, due to these conflicting demands, women frequently leave the workforce earlier, they make less money, they have smaller retirements. So focusing on finances becomes a real critical component of caring for yourself. And it's frequently placed, for some reason, it can be a low priority on the list. Hey, let's be honest, it's not always something that people want to focus on and deal with. They don't enjoy doing the financial planning component like Sarah, you and I like to do. So let's take a minute and talk about the three primary areas where working with a financial advisor can save time, reduce stress, because that's a big part of what we're trying to accomplish, reduce that stress, and avoid costly errors. So those three areas: estate planning, financial planning, and investment oversight. If you or your loved ones have any accumulated assets, it's really important, and frankly, it's important for everybody to make sure that you've done the proper estate planning. But establishing a relationship with a trusted advisor, because there's so many parallel financial decisions that you have to consider for you as the caregiver, as well as for your loved one. And a few primary questions that you should be asking yourself, and we will have resources for you on this, but are the estate planning documents up to date? Are accounts properly titled and beneficiary designations current? That's really critical. And then very important in our world, are durable powers of attorney in place. So a durable power of attorney is designed to remain in effect when the account holder can no longer make financial decisions for themselves. So really evaluating that and getting that done before health starts failing is important, but if it already has, get proactive on that, quickly. Care needs and caregiving can be expensive. And Sharon, it sounds like you're a great resource to help identify where there's opportunity in the community to maybe reduce some of those costs. But a financial advisor can also work with you to create a financial plan to assess the impact on your loved one and your own personal financial situation. Because as the caregiver, there's going to be a financial impact potentially of reduced income, retirement benefits, health benefits that you may be sacrificing if you go into a full-time caregiving need. So you've got to anticipate what's coming and make sure you're planning for that. You also may be receiving an inheritance, so doing some planning around that becomes very critical. You really want to have a plan to avoid missteps that can drain personal finances. So getting with a financial advisor, getting with these ladies as resources can ultimately help you do that, because you want to make sure that your assets are able to take you through your retirement years as well. And then lastly, regarding investment oversight, time is a precious commodity for caregivers and their loved ones, and worrying about IRS rules or our IRA required minimum distributions, tax implications on rebalancing to raise cash for expense needs, or stepped up cost basis rules for inherited assets, that's just not something that's going to be on a caregiver's radar screen. They want to spend time with their loved ones. So delegating the responsibility to a trusted financial advisor, provide that oversight and guidance on managing the assets based on your loved one and your specific goals and objectives, can really provide tremendous peace of mind.
Thanks, Christina. One kind of common theme that I'm observing is how critical it is to ask for help, whether that comes from a professional, like you see on the panel today, or even a friend or a family member. So I'd like to direct the conversation back to Emmy and talk about some of the ways that a caregiver can find the opportunity to integrate self-care. What are some of the things a caregiver can do to care for themselves in their busy schedule?
So one thing I love about this panel is that we're all backing one another up. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Sharon and Tara at the same time. Basically, the first thing I want to mention is the one thing you notice in burnout is a lot of that is depression symptoms. And we talked about depression is so high in caregivers. And I'd like to point out that exercise has been proven to be as effective in mild and moderate depression as medication. And so why is that important? And the first thing we hear, and I love having clients come in, I didn't go to the doctor. I came to talk about stuff. But we know that. We know exercise is beneficial. And so why is that important? Well, you know, there have been several points made. It doesn't mean you have to go out and walk for 45 minutes. You have a friend who comes over to see someone that you're taking care of, and you say, would you mind if I went outside and walked for 10 minutes while you're here? And so there's very small ways, just like she was saying, you know, stretching beside your bed. We have to lower, I hate to say lower our standard, but lower our standard. It's not going to be the way it was when you could go outside and walk with your friends for an hour. So take it where you can get it. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, and 10 minutes in the afternoon is still 30 minutes. And so take your 30 minutes any way you can get it. The other thing I'd like to talk about self-care is again, piggybacking on Sharon, you know, this is my favorite thing, and I have been a caregiver. What can I do for you? And what is the common response of most people, but especially females? I am doing great. Thank you so much for offering. And we're frazzled and we can't even take a shower. And so here's what I want everyone to practice. I would love for you to come over around 2 o'clock if you can today and let me have 30 minutes outside just to get some time. Because here's the truth, people want to help and they want to be there for you. They don't know what you need. It would help me so much if you could, you know, bring me dinner on Saturday night. I'm really struggling. But they need ideas. It's not enough to say, anything you want to do is fine, because that's not what we do. And we laugh about it, but we know we all do it guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And so self-care looks like, you know, taking that time to ask for help, because we have people, and again, Sharon's so right, churches are amazing. They want to be there for families. They don't know how. So take advantage. You know, if your pastor is offered to come over and speak to your significant other, would you mind if I went outside for 10 minutes while you're here? And our loved one, they want to be able to take that time privately to also speak to the people that come to see them. And so allow them that opportunity as well. Self-care also looks like respite care, and we talked about that. And I know that Sarah's going to ask me a little bit later about that, but respite care is huge with hospice. Also having the daycare, especially for dementia. And here's where we run into self-care issues. We have guilt and shame over taking time away from our loved one. And the healthier we are, the happier our loved ones are. They want us to be healthy and happy. The difficult conversations also we try to avoid as healthcare givers, but the truth is our loved ones want to have those conversations. And so I encourage you to talk to your loved one. You know, I see you are struggling. What do you want? What kind of care do you want if they're capable of having those conversations? I encourage you to do that, because when it comes time to make decisions, there's a lot of, especially when we're healthy is the best time, obviously, but you know, there's a lot of comfort in knowing what our loved ones want. And we are so uncomfortable with that conversation. And I think you mentioned my late husband passed of cancer, and he was 43, so very young, too young. But one thing that a priest said to me, my mother's priest actually, that came to visit, is dying is a holy time. It's as holy as when a newborn baby is born. And so we want to be able to be there with our loved ones in all of those aspects, emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And we cannot do that if we do not take care of ourselves.
Thank you so much, Emmy. That was beautiful. And I'd like to key in on one thing you mentioned. It is just so critical to ask for help, and we deal with so much guilt and shame. And in preparing for this, Sharon and I had a conversation about the G word, guilt, right? So Sharon, one of the resources that you have shared with us is a list of support groups. So what I'd love for you to share at this point is just tell us about those support groups. What are some of the benefits you've seen people who attend those support groups have?
Well, the support groups I've been doing them since 2011, and I'm up to 7 right now. I like what they do is we have different types of support groups. Some of them are educational because if you don't know what you're facing as a caregiver, you've got to be prepared for that, particularly in the dementia world. But also we have a lot of my groups are dump and vent, and it's okay. So that G word, the shame, goes out the window because everybody's in the same boat as you. They're allowed to get angry. They're allowed to be frustrated. They're allowed to be very irritable with their loved one because it's okay, and it's a judgment-free zone. And I always make sure I have candy and cookies because we indulge. I know that may not be the norm, but I'm sorry, particularly since many of my groups have a lot of women, although I do have some groups that are only men, particularly with dementia. So having that, and it's interesting, they'll come into the groups in the very beginning very resistant to any kind of placement, any kind of help. I can do this, I don't need anything. And by the end of maybe 6 months, they're helping other newbies in the group and they take ownership of it. And then to see them allow themselves to actually have a life, get respite care in there 3 times a week, because now they have permission. They're okay. They're not bad people. They're not a bad spouse or a bad adult child for doing that. And they feel good about it. And then as it transitions, many of them have lost their loved ones. They come in, they usually have a closure session, and they tell everybody they lost mom, dad, wife, husband. And it's almost like you were saying about holy. It's a celebration, not that they died, but of them being who they were. And it's also a validation of the people who were their caregivers to say, good job, well done. Whether they were in a placement, whether they kept them at home, it doesn't matter. What matters is we validate them as human beings and that they did the best they could do. And saying that over and over again, after a while, they really internalize it and they believe it. And that is the real beauty of a support group.
Thank you, Sharon. I just can't imagine how valuable that must be to the folks who attend. And I'd like to kind of keep the conversation moving in this direction and give Tara an opportunity to share briefly about her grief recovery method work. Maybe in about 60 seconds to 90 seconds, Tara, could you kind of share what this looks like and whether a person in the role of a caregiver might benefit?
Yes, thank you. I hope I'm not going to take up too much of my 60 to 90 seconds, but I want to thank Sharon and Emmy both for using the word anger, because one of the things, as you were speaking, Sharon, and earlier when Emmy brought it up, one of the things I have noticed, and since this webinar is geared towards women primarily, one of the things I have noticed in grief recovery is that as women, we tend to avoid and ignore and pretend that our anger doesn't exist. And if it happens to leak out at some point, we feel bad for it, as Sharon was saying. So I really appreciate that is being brought in as a topic in regards to caregiving, in regards to grief, in regards to life in general. So just wanted to say that quickly before I try to boil down the grief recovery method into the rest of my 60 to 90 seconds. So just to put it in a nutshell, the grief recovery method is an educational program for people who are grieving, which you may not know it, but that's everyone. Everyone's got some heartbreak that they're carrying around with them. It is an 8-session program in which these days I meet one-on-one with people most often. I haven't done a group since COVID started, but I meet with people one-on-one, and the program is based on a book called The Grief Recovery Handbook. It's a structured program in that each time I meet with someone, I assign them a homework, assignment. I give them a printed sheet with that homework on it. The homework is based on the book. They go home, they read some of the book, and they complete their assignment. They bring it back, and we talk about what feelings came up in that as they were doing the assignments and the reading. I could go on and on and on about the nature of those assignments, but I think that would be a little bit too much for what we've got as far as time today. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them separately. But thanks for letting me speak to that. It has been truly transformational in my own life and the lives of my clients. So it's very rewarding work and very inspiring for me to offer it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tara. It's just such a delight to be able to share the different ways that people can seek support, that like kind of social and emotional support and spiritual support as well. So I'm just so thrilled that you, Tara, Sharon, and Emmy have all been able to share kind of what that looks like to work with you all, whether it's a support group or one-on-one sessions. I just truly hope that people on the call will take advantage of some of these opportunities. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to turn the conversation back to Christina. And I think one of the things that people might experience some guilt or shame or discomfort around is the idea that a loved one's kind of capacity for decision making is diminishing. So Christina, can you speak to why it could be important to let your financial advisor know, or your loved one's financial advisor know, if you start to suspect that the capacity to make decisions is diminishing?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So, this is a phrase, diminished financial capacity. It's commonly used, but the real challenge is recognizing when someone has crossed that threshold and become really a financial risk to themselves, or they become vulnerable to financial exploitation. And that is more and more common today. It is something that when you look in terms of just technology and usage of technology, and as people age, and we've heard the term dementia thrown around today, technology is challenging enough, but when you start to then combine that with that diminished financial capacity, it's overwhelming. And for family members, it's also an emotional time, and it can be challenging to acknowledge changes in their loved ones' cognitive skills, and it can be challenging to get proactive about communicating with and getting involved in financial meetings on behalf of your loved one. But it's critical. It's really important that you start early to have those family conversations, have conversations with your loved one, and bring in whoever is going to be really that financial power of attorney to the conversations. So the other thing to recognize is that financial advisors may actually be the first to recognize the signs of diminishing capacity. But by law, an advisor can only communicate with individuals who are listed on the account or who are designated as power of attorney. So as I previously mentioned, having those up-to-date estate planning documents to include a durable power of attorney and executing the document, actually getting on the accounts, bank accounts, investment accounts, et cetera, it's really critical to a smooth transition to have that trusted family member, that they are there and they're doing this on behalf of their loved one.
Thanks, Christina. You mentioned just how critical it is to have your estate planning documents up to date, and I know that can be a little bit of an uncomfortable endeavor to get those things updated, because it's not fun to think about, but it is so important, and it just makes it much easier when these types of things come up. And Sharon has a fantastic presentation that she offers about preparing your red box. So Sharon, we have about 10 minutes remaining in our session. So relatively quickly, could you share some of the highlights that you cover in that red box presentation?
It piggybacks on you, Christina, totally. One is the financial planning aspect, and if you don't have any money, helping people process where to apply for Medicaid, how to do it, what you need to say, the direct phone numbers, all those specifics. But also it's exactly what the most important document I tell everybody is durable power of attorney. And because I deal in the dementia world, sometimes a lot of the people don't have the capacity anymore. And with hospice, I mean, when I'm a volunteer for 3 hospices, and one of the things they utilize me for is as a notary. I'm a mobile notary who's free. Everything I do is free. And so what I do is I go to the bedsides of the dying, and if they're capable of making that decision, then I can notarize it. But again, Christina, I have to make sure that the banks, and I tell them, take them to the banks and make sure they have their blessing on it. But if they don't have the document, if it's too late, then you're looking at a guardianship issue, which is
Right.
thousands of dollars. And so preparing for that, so having the durable power of attorney, who's going to make your healthcare decisions? I always use the example, I have 3 children, 2 will not pull the plug, 1 will. Well, guess who's my healthcare advocate? So you've got to make a decision that people will follow whatever your wishes are. But I had a very wise judge tell me one time, he said, Sharon, if it ain't written down, it didn't happen. And that is absolutely true. You have to write these things down. The will is lovely. You've got to have that, but that's after you die. What do you do while you're here? What documents do you need? Birth certificates, make sure they're original or certified. Marriage licenses, make sure they're certified. They need copies of your Social Security card, your Medicare card, your supplement card, even your credit cards. Have that all in a file. I have a red box and everything is in there and labeled. In my case, I am a little OCD, ladies, that's true. But one of the things I do is I pre-planned. I have my obituary written. I have my my cremation policy. I have my niche paid for. My husband refused to do his, so I bought him one right next to me. And so those are the things you have to think about. Yes, you're absolutely right. One of you mentioned that we don't want to have that conversation. Too bad, so sad. You've got to have it, and it's really unkind not to. I tell all my contemporaries and peers, I say, look, you're being very selfish by not doing these documents. They're 80 years old. For goodness sakes, get this done. Tell your kids what you want. Let them know. Or your spouse, and even spouses don't talk to each other. So make sure you have all of that. I even have the music that I want played. Most churches have some sort of a sheet or a document that you can fill out that has all this information for whoever the minister that'll be alive at the time you die. Most banks have something called payment on death. I'm not putting my children's names on my bank account, but it costs nothing to go to the bank and get a payment on death so they have access to money for an obituary or for, which costs thousands of dollars anymore if you want a picture in there. But telling people all those tips, how you can do your obituary online and it doesn't cost anything through a funeral home, making sure that they have the really concrete prices of what things cost today. A burial, $16,000 to $25,000. You know, a cremation, I'll tell them where you can get it for $25 a month with the Florida Trust, but do it. Don't say you're going to do it, do it. I have people that have come to my presentation 3 times and they'll tell me, I'm getting there, Sharon, I'm getting there. I just needed to help. You needed to tell me one more time what I needed to do. Well, the list is there. It's not rocket science. This is something I developed because I wasn't prepared 8 years ago. And so now I am. And anybody I have contact with are tired of hearing me talk about my red box, but it is something every single person should do. And one other criteria for those of you who have children, as an adult child protective investigator, one of my saddest jobs was going to a home where parents did not have any kind of guardianship or anything written down as to who would care for their children. Guess what? I had to take those children into custody, put them in foster care. Their parents are in a car accident or whatever until that's written down and we have some idea of where grandma or aunt, uncle, somebody who can care for these children. So we traumatize them again. So please, as parents of children, do that. So that's my spiel. Sticking to it.
Thank you, Sharon. sometimes we do need somebody to light a fire under us to get these important things done. And I just so appreciate your passion for this. So
And
we're
your
coming
focus
up.
on planning. It makes our
Yes,
hearts just sing.
yes, as financial planners, we
It's a
love
pleasure
to
to
plan.
all of you, yes.
We do. Well, as we kind of come to a close, I would like to return to Tara and have her show us one of those practices, one of those breath work practices that we can do together, if you're comfortable, to just kind of get a taste of what that physical relief feels like, to just spend a moment on yourself. So I'll turn it over to you, Tara.
Okay, thank you. So it is never required to join in, but if the rest of the panel might like to experience this as well, I'm going to ask everyone to close their eyes. I'm much better at talking when other people have their eyes closed. So this is a really simple practice that you can do anytime. You don't have to have your eyes closed for this. So you could even do this as you're driving to an appointment, as you're taking a shower, as you're doing anything. But what we're going to do first is just establish a nice deep breath. Not what I call an overachiever deep breath, but a nice natural maximum breath. So you're just looking to take up a little more space and a little more time with each inhale and exhale. And I'm going to explain the practice to you, which is sometimes called a physiological sigh. Not a very yoga-esque name, more in the scientific realm, but as you're deeply breathing, I'm going to explain to you how we're going to change this, and then we'll all do it together. So continue to just breathe deeply, your natural maximum breath in and out. And what we're going to do in a few moments is we're going to take a big, same as the inhale that you're taking now, a nice stretched out but not forcefully stretched out inhale. And then at the top of that, we're going to add an extra big sniff, if you will, for lack of better words. And then the exhale, when we begin that, is going to come out through the mouth, and it's going to be a long, slow exhale. So we're going to start that with the next breath in. We're going to do 5 of these together. So nice, slow, stretched out inhale. At the very top, you're going to do that extra kind of burst. And then you're going to open your mouth and exhale slowly, 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 and deeply. And as you're exhaling, you're going to let the shoulders drop away from the head. And then at your own pace, you're going to do 4 more of those. So it's a big inhale. At the top, it's another burst of inhale. And then an exhale through the mouth. Shoulders relaxing away from the head. And I'll let you do the next 3 on your own without any verbal cues. When you get to that last one, make sure that you're really letting the shoulders drop down away from the ears. And then once you've done 5 of these, you can just return to that slow, deep breath. And then feel free to open your eyes at any time if you did have them closed, which was also optional. And then just notice if that actually made a difference for you. The answer doesn't have to be yes, but for most people it is. And that wasn't even 5 minutes, I don't think. It might have been. But notice that it doesn't take very long to make a difference for yourself. just a few minutes, a few moments. You didn't even have to close your eyes. It doesn't need to be, you know, an hour of uninterrupted working out to affect some positive change.
Yeah,
Please excuse the cat noises.
I didn't hear any cat noises, but
Oh, good.
I can say that was absolutely had an effect on my heart rate, on my body temperature. That was wonderful, Tara, and I really hope the attendees participated as well and got to feel the benefits of that. So I'd like to bring us to a close by just wrapping up and sharing a few takeaways that I gathered. It's just so important to leverage your resources in the community, in your personal community, your friends, your family, but also the professional community. I think I speak for all of us when I say we would be truly thrilled to help anybody that needs it in any of our areas. And that's why we're doing this today. We would just be really overjoyed to help. And also importantly, get organized. You know, put together your red box. And you can also use a resource that Christina and I have provided from Saltmarsh Financial Advisors. It's called our asset inventory. You can use that to compile information about your assets and digital assets, physical assets, anything, just so that, you know, if that day does come, your loved ones are prepared and in the know about where things are located. And finally, just be proactive about discussions with your loved ones and your family members, and being the caregiver can be really overwhelming, and it's just important to prioritize setting little goals for yourself, writing a little to-do list, and being able to check off small things. You don't have to take huge steps like Tara just showed us. You don't have to take huge steps to make progress. It can take, you know, just a few minutes of your time. And ask for help. Use your loved ones, and if they offer help, tell them what they can do for you. I love that Emmy made that so clear and specific. I need you to come at 2 p.m. and put one load of laundry in the washing machine for me while I step outside and do some breath work like Tara showed us. So I just would love to extend a thank you to our panelists and to our audience for attending today. And to our audience, you'll be receiving a survey when this webinar concludes, and I would really like for you to share your feedback. And additionally, if you have any questions that came up for you either before the session or during the session, there's a place for you to include those questions in the survey. So we will receive those and kind of share those with the professional on the panel who's best suited to address that for you, and they'll reach out to you via email. If it's been valuable for you, I hope that you'll share this recording with your loved ones or anybody else who you think might benefit. And I hope that you return to the recording because there was a lot of valuable information shared today. And I wouldn't be surprised if you watch it again and find one more nugget that can help you. So I would really, really love for you to watch it one more time or share it with a friend or a family member. We also have several building confidence sessions coming up. Of note is one called Aligning Your Money with Your Values. It's going to be focused on charitable giving. That's going to be on August 3rd in person in our Pensacola office, and we would love for you to attend. And then finally, Navigating Divorce is going to be another virtual session like this one taking place on September 3rd. So this concludes our time together, and I just hope that you reach out to any participant, any panelist here that we can support you. So thank you. I'll turn it back to Nancy.
Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. I did get some really good, valuable information just from listening from behind the scenes. As Sarah mentioned, today's webinar was recorded, and everyone can receive a link to that recording along with links to download all of the resources again in your email. Be sure to check your spam or junk folders in case it lands in there. And just remember to take our survey on your way out. But thank you all for joining us today, and we all hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.